Welcome to West Film. We bring you the best movie recaps, reviews, ending explained videos, and hidden details from your favorite films. If you love great movies, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Now grab some popcorn, and let's jump into today's movie. In one swift motion, he shoves Ray's car off the tracks and stops the speeding train with his sheer strength. Ray's life is saved, but Hancock's intervention causes yet more unintended damage. The sudden stop sends several cargo cars crashing into one another, leaving even more destruction behind. Witnesses immediately start criticizing Hancock again. Ray, though, steps forward and defends him, telling the crowd that he's only alive because Hancock showed up in time. He shakes Hancock's hand gratefully and jokes that while his life was saved, his car is now completely wrecked. Without saying much, Hancock lifts the entire car, with Ray still sitting inside, and flies off with it. Moments later, he sets the car down right in front of Ray's house. Ray's young son, Aaron, runs outside excitedly the moment he spots Hancock. Unlike most people in the city, Aaron absolutely adores him. Thrilled to meet his hero, Aaron talks his father into inviting Hancock in for coffee, and the evening turns into an impromptu dinner. During the meal, it's clear that Ray's wife, Mary, isn't comfortable having Hancock around. His clumsiness and odd sense of humor put her on edge. While chatting with Aaron, Hancock jokes around about the food in his usual goofy way, but Mary quickly scolds him, telling him that's not how you talk to a child. Aaron then mentions that a boy at school has been bullying him, and Hancock casually suggests a pretty aggressive fix: hit the bully where it hurts and drag him across the floor to scare him off. Mary is horrified at the advice being handed out to her son and makes her disapproval obvious. Soon after, Hancock heads for the door, but Ray stops him outside and tells him that, despite everything, he thinks Hancock deserves some respect from the people of Los Angeles. Ray believes Hancock could become a real hero if he just changed his approach. A few days later, Hancock comes back and asks Ray for advice on repairing his reputation. Ray happily agrees to help and shows him footage of his past rescues. The pattern is obvious: Hancock does save lives, but every rescue leaves a trail of destruction behind it. Ray explains that this is exactly why the public can't stand him. While the two of them are talking it over, Mary comes home and turns on the TV. The news is once again going after Hancock, this time for skipping his last 6 court dates and calling him irresponsible enough to be locked up. That gives Ray a bold idea: Hancock should turn himself in and go to court voluntarily. If he accepts jail time, the theory goes, the city will soon realize how much it actually needs him. Once crime starts climbing without him around, people will start to appreciate what he does. Hancock initially hates the idea, but after mulling it over, he reluctantly agrees. Once he's behind bars, he quickly discovers plenty of inmates hold grudges against him, since he's the one who put many of them there in the first place. Several try to jump him, but none of them stand a chance. His strength makes him practically untouchable. Even though breaking out would be effortless, Hancock chooses to sit tight and follow Ray's plan, waiting for the moment the city starts missing him. Sure enough, as time passes, crime in Los Angeles climbs with no one there to stop it. Ray eventually visits him in prison and tells him he's been officially sentenced to 8 years, though good behavior could knock that down to 4.5. Hearing this sets Hancock off, and he accidentally smashes part of the prison gate. Ray talks him down and reminds him the whole plan only works if he stays patient. Later, Mary and Aaron pay him a visit too, bringing homemade spaghetti and meatballs, which lifts his spirits a little. Eventually, though, prison boredom starts to wear on him. Then one day, while he's sitting in his cell, an officer shows up and tells him he's needed outside, and this time, he's handed a proper superhero costume. When he reaches the scene, He's careful with every move, making sure nothing around him gets damaged. Ray had given him a specific tip. Whenever he runs into a police officer, tell them, "You're doing a good job." Hancock tries the line on the first officer he meets, who just shrugs it off, saying he already knows he's doing a good job. During the rescue, Hancock saves a female officer who's in danger, and after bringing her back safely, he keeps repeating Ray's line to officer after officer. Then a more serious situation breaks out. 4 armed criminals have taken a group of hostages inside a building. Hancock moves in carefully and takes the criminals down one by one with precise, controlled moves, avoiding any destruction this time. The hostages come out safely, and as Hancock exits with the survivors, he tells the lead officer, once again, "You're doing a good job." This time, though, the officer smiles back and tells Hancock that he's the one who did an excellent job. For the first time, the people of Los Angeles start cheering for him. A crowd gathers outside, applauding the hero who's finally turned things around. That evening, Hancock joins Ray and Mary for dinner at their place. During the conversation, Ray finally asks the question that's been on his mind whether Hancock might actually be an alien. Hancock admits he genuinely doesn't know who he is. In fact, he reveals something surprising. He has no memory of anything before about 80 years ago. He woke up in a hospital badly injured with no recollection of his past, and within an hour, his wounds mysteriously healed on their own. When the doctors went through his belongings, all they found were 2 things in his pockets: a piece of chewing gum and 2 movie tickets. No friends or family ever showed up to see him. Doctors guessed he'd likely been hurt trying to stop a mugging. Ever since, Hancock has lived through the decades without aging, with no idea where he actually came from. Ray shares something personal in return. Mary is actually Aaron's stepmother, since his birth mother died during childbirth. Later that night, Ray drinks too much and gets seriously drunk, so Hancock helps carry him home. As Hancock is about to leave, something strange happens between him and Mary. He suddenly leans in and kisses her. To his surprise, she kisses him back, if only for a brief moment. Almost instantly, she reacts violently, hurling Hancock straight through a wall with tremendous force. In that shocking instant, a hidden truth comes out. Mary has superhuman abilities of her own. Hancock just stands there, stunned, trying to process what's happened. Mary calmly warns him that what he's just discovered can never be revealed to anyone, especially not Ray, and before he can ask anything else, she walks off, leaving him speechless. The next morning, Ray wakes up and immediately notices a large section of the wall has been smashed open. Confused, he asks Mary what happened, and without missing a beat, she tells him Hancock sneezed in the night and accidentally blew a hole through the wall. Ray, none the wiser, believes her. Not long after, Hancock shows up at the house again, now completely convinced Mary is hiding something. To test his theory that she has abilities like his, he grabs a fork in the kitchen and jabs it toward her shoulder. The fork bends and snaps instantly. Undeterred, he grabs another object and smacks her over the head with it, and that shatters too. Still trying to provoke a reaction, he picks up 2 frying pans as if he's about to strike her. Before he can swing, Mary spins around and demands to know what exactly he thinks he's doing. Hancock calmly explains he's just trying to figure her out. He now knows she's exactly like him, and he wants the truth about who she really is. Mary reluctantly agrees to talk, but only on one condition: she'll answer his questions once, and after that, he has to leave her family alone for good. That evening, Mary meets Hancock somewhere quiet and isolated, away from the city. The tension between them is obvious. Hancock gets straight to the question that's been eating at him: what exactly are they? Mary tells him that throughout history, people have called beings like them all kinds of things: gods, angels, and in modern times, simply superheroes. Hancock assumes that means they're basically the same, but Mary corrects him, they're not equal at all. She's actually stronger than he is. Curious, Hancock asks if there are others like them out there. Mary shakes her head. Long ago there were many, but over time they were all destroyed or disappeared. Now there are only two left. Are the two of them? He asks about their relationship, and after a pause, Mary claims they're brother and sister. Hancock immediately rejects that. If they were really siblings, what happened between them the night before never would have. The kiss proves she's lying. He demands to know why she's hiding the truth, but she won't say anything more. Frustrated, Hancock threatens to tell Ray everything and launches into the sky, heading back toward the city. Mary follows immediately, and by the time they reach Los Angeles, she's caught up and the confrontation turns into a full-blown fight. Mary wasn't exaggerating about her strength. She overwhelms Hancock with ease, hitting him again and again with incredible force. Their fight tears through parts of the city, damaging buildings and terrifying everyone watching. People on the street stare in shock as two flying superhumans clash overhead. Ray also happens to see the fight and is stunned to realize Mary is flying just like Hancock. Once the chaos ends, the next scene finds Hancock, Mary, and Ray together at the house. Ray, completely confused, demands to know who Mary really is and what's going on. Mary finally comes clean. She's the same kind of being as Hancock, and long before she ever met Ray, she was actually Hancock's wife. She explains that no matter how far she runs or where she goes, Hancock always somehow finds his way back to her. The connection between them is too strong to escape. Ray then asks the obvious question: if they once loved each other, why doesn't she want to be with him anymore? Mary gives him the painful answer: whenever beings like them stay close for too long, their powers start to weaken. Slowly, they become as fragile as ordinary humans, and if they stay together long enough, they can age, weaken, and eventually die. After hearing this, Hancock storms off and heads straight for a liquor store, slipping right back into his old drinking habit. While he's sitting at the bar, the bartender quietly warns him that two men are waiting around the corner planning to rob him. Hancock walks outside and simply smashes through the wall at the corner, dragging both attackers into the open. During the struggle, one of them fires a gun and hits him. After knocking the criminals out, Hancock notices something alarming: blood running from the bullet wound. That's never happened before. He's been shot plenty of times without a scratch, but now he's clearly hurt. He's rushed to the hospital, where Mary soon shows up. She explains that his weakness is happening because he's gotten too close to her again. Now their proximity drains their abilities, and that if he puts some distance between them, his powers will return to normal. Mary then reveals more about their history. They've existed together for thousands of years, repeatedly finding each other throughout history, but every time they stay together too long, they lose their strength and become mortal. Hancock asks about that mysterious night 80 years ago, the last thing tied to his missing memory. Mary explains they were living in Miami at the time. One evening they were relaxing on the beach, planning to catch a movie later that night, which explains the 2 tickets found in his pocket. Suddenly they were attacked by a group of people, and during the fight, Hancock was struck violently in the head and badly hurt. He was rushed to the hospital, and Mary stayed by his side the whole time, but when he woke up, he had no memory of her at all. Realizing his memory was gone and that staying close would only weaken him further, she made the heartbreaking choice to leave. Shortly after she left, his injuries healed completely within an hour. While Mary is still telling him all this in the hospital room, danger shows up. Parker, the criminal Hancock defeated earlier and who lost a hand in the process, has broken out of prison with several other criminals, driven by revenge. Parker storms the hospital with his gang, and when they reach Hancock's room, Mary steps in front of him to shield him. The criminals open fire, and Mary is hit by multiple bullets, leaving her critically wounded. Seeing this sends Hancock into a rage. He unleashes his fury and takes the attackers down one by one, until only Parker is left standing, still armed. Parker keeps shooting Hancock too, leaving him badly injured, and Hancock collapses to the floor. As Parker walks over to finish him off, Ray suddenly appears and swings an axe, chopping off Parker's remaining hand before he can pull the trigger. Meanwhile, Mary's condition worsens as her heart stops, and doctors scramble to revive her. Realizing what he has to do, Hancock forces himself out of the hospital and flies away, putting distance between himself and Mary so her strength can return. A month later, Ray and his family get a phone call. Hancock is now in New York City. During the call, he proudly announces that he's carved Ray's company logo, All Heart Marketing, into the surface of the moon. In a mid-credits scene, Hancock is later shown confronting another criminal who's pointing a gun at him, demanding help escaping the police. The criminal calls him an idiot, but instead of getting angry this time, Hancock just smiles. And with that, the story wraps up. Picture a superhero who can outfly a jet, stop trains with his bare hands, and walk away from explosions without a scratch. Now picture that same superhero as the most hated man in the city. This isn't the story of a hero who saves the day and basks in applause. It's the story of a man who saves lives while somehow making everything worse. Meet Hancock. He has jaw-dropping powers: strength, flight, invincibility, everything you'd expect from the world's greatest superhero. But instead of inspiring hope, he leaves behind wrecked highways, shattered buildings, and millions of dollars in damages every time he tries to help. People don't cheer when Hancock shows up, they groan. The news blames him, the city sues him, and the public sees him as nothing more than a reckless disaster waiting to happen. But here's the real mystery. Why would someone with godlike abilities live like a broken man? Hancock spends his days drunk, angry, and completely alone. He doesn't remember where he came from, doesn't know why he has these powers, and deep down it feels like the world gave up on him a long time ago. Then one unexpected moment changes everything. After saving an ordinary man named Ray from a deadly accident, Hancock is offered something he never thought he needed: a second chance. A chance to fix his reputation, to become the hero people actually believe in, and maybe even a chance to discover who he really is. But as Hancock's past slowly comes to light, a shocking secret emerges, one that ties him to someone far closer than he ever imagined. And once that secret is out, nothing about his life will ever be the same. This isn't just another superhero story. It's a story about redemption, identity, and the price of being different. By the end, you might find yourself asking a pretty powerful question: what if the world's greatest hero was also its biggest mistake? Before we dig into the chaos, the secrets, and the surprising twists of this story, let's take a quick look at the film itself. We're talking about Hancock, released in 2008. It stars Will Smith in one of his most unusual and unpredictable roles: a superhero powerful enough to save the world but flawed enough to almost wreck it. The film was directed by Peter Berg, and alongside Will Smith it features strong performances from Charlize Theron and Jason Bateman. On the surface, Hancock might look like a typical superhero movie: superpowers, action sequences, criminals, a city that needs saving. But the film quickly makes clear it's not interested in following the usual formula. Instead of a clean, polished hero, Hancock gives us someone very different: a man with incredible abilities but absolutely no control over his life. The story is set in modern-day Los Angeles, a city Hancock is technically supposed to protect. But every time he tries to stop crime, things go horribly wrong. Cars crash, buildings collapse, entire highways get wrecked. Yes, he saves people, but the damage he leaves behind is so massive that the public sees him less as a hero and more as a walking disaster. That's where the real story kicks in. Everything changes when Hancock saves a struggling PR expert named Ray. Grateful for having his life saved, Ray becomes convinced Hancock isn't a bad person, he just has a terrible reputation problem. So Ray offers him something no one else ever has, a plan to rebuild his image. A shot at turning the most hated man in the city into someone people actually respect. But what starts as a simple PR makeover slowly turns into something much bigger, because as Hancock's life begins to change, a strange connection starts to emerge, one that links him to Ray's wife, Mary, in a way no one could have predicted. That's when the story stops being just about a troubled superhero and becomes a mystery about who Hancock really is, where his powers came from, and why his past has stayed hidden for so long. At first glance, Hancock looks like a typical superhero movie, powerful abilities, explosive action, a city constantly in danger. But once the story gets going, it's clear this film is doing something very different. This isn't just a superhero story, it's a story about a broken hero trying to find his place in the world. Most superhero films focus on characters rising to become symbols of hope, but Hancock starts at the exact opposite point. He's already powerful, yet completely lost. That's where one of the movie's biggest themes comes in. Redemption. Hancock is a man who's made countless mistakes. Every rescue he performs ends in chaos and destruction. The public hates him, the government doesn't trust him, and even the media treats him as a problem rather than a solution. But underneath it all, the film keeps asking one question: can someone who's ruined everything still become a hero? Another major theme running through the story is loneliness. Despite having abilities that make him nearly unstoppable, Hancock is one of the most isolated characters you'll find in a superhero film. He spends most of his time alone, sitting on rooftops, drinking, avoiding the world around him. He doesn't know where he came from, doesn't remember his past, and doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere. That emotional emptiness fuels a lot of his reckless behavior. As the story unfolds, another theme surfaces: identity. Who is Hancock, really? Is he just a destructive superhero who doesn't care about anyone? Or is there something deeper behind his anger and confusion? The film balances these heavier ideas with a distinctive tone. At times it's genuinely funny. Hancock's reckless behavior leads to some wild, hilarious moments. But then, without warning, the story shifts into something more emotional and mysterious, because beneath the explosions and comedy, the film is quietly building toward a much bigger revelation, one that changes everything we think we know about Hancock. So while Hancock delivers the action you'd expect from a superhero movie, its real strength lies in exploring the human side of someone who seems almost godlike. And as the story goes on, those themes of redemption, loneliness, and identity collide in ways no one sees coming. As Hancock heads toward its final act, everything we thought we understood about him starts to change. Up to this point, Hancock believed he was simply a man with incredible powers and no memory of his past. But the truth turns out to be far more complicated, and far more tragic. Ray's wife, Mary, played by Charlize Theron, finally reveals the secret she's been hiding the whole time. She and Hancock aren't ordinary superhumans. They belong to a mysterious pair of immortal beings who've existed for thousands of years, created to live as partners and protect humanity together. Wherever they went, people saw them as gods, heroes, or legends. But there's one painful rule governing their existence: whenever the two of them stay close for too long, their powers slowly start to fade. The closer they get, the more human and vulnerable they become. Centuries ago, Mary made a hard call and left Hancock so he could stay powerful and immortal. But years later, after an incident that left him with no memory of his past, including her, they've now reunited, and the same rule is kicking back in. Hancock's strength is fading, his invulnerability is weakening, and for the first time in his life, he can actually be hurt. And that's exactly when danger strikes. A criminal Hancock once captured escapes and comes looking for revenge. With Hancock weakened and vulnerable, things suddenly turn life-threatening. In the brutal confrontation that follows, Hancock is badly hurt while trying to protect Trey and Mary A. For the first time, the unstoppable superhero is on the verge of dying. But that moment leads to Hancock's most important realization: if he stays close to Mary, they'll both lose their powers and eventually die. The only way for them to survive and keep protecting the world is to stay apart. So Hancock makes the heartbreaking decision to leave A, not because he doesn't care, but because distance is the only way to protect the people he loves. Later, we see him watching over the city from afar, back in his role as a hero, but now with a deeper understanding of who he truly is. In one quiet, emotional moment, Ray notices something incredible in the night sky. Hancock has carved Ray's company logo, the all-heart symbol, onto the surface of the moon. It's a silent thank you, a reminder that even someone as broken as Hancock can change. Because in the end, Hancock didn't just become a better hero, he finally discovered what it truly means to be one. On the surface, Hancock looks like a straightforward action film: explosions, superpowers, a reckless hero crashing through buildings. But if you pay close attention, the movie quietly hides several clever details and symbolic moments that reveal much more about Hancock's character and his journey. One of the strongest visual themes throughout the film is isolation. Think about how Hancock is often shown early on sitting alone atop tall buildings, sleeping on public benches, or flying high above the city where no one can reach him. These aren't just random shots, they visually capture how disconnected he feels from the world around him. Despite his incredible power, Hancock is emotionally distant from everyone. Another subtle detail shows up in how Mary reacts when Hancock first enters her home. Her body language immediately shifts as she becomes tense, cautious, slightly defensive. At first it just seems like she doesn't trust him, but later we realize her reaction wasn't fear, it was recognition. Mary already knows exactly who Hancock is, and she's desperately trying to hide it. The film also uses destruction as a form of symbolism. Early on, Hancock's rescues leave massive damage behind. Buildings collapse, streets crack open, cars fly through the air. This chaos mirrors his inner state: confused, angry, emotionally unstable. But as the story progresses and Hancock begins to change, the way he uses his powers changes too. His movements become more controlled, his rescues cleaner, and the destruction gradually disappears. That visual shift reflects his personal growth from a reckless outcast into someone who finally understands responsibility. Then there's the film's final symbolic moment. At the end, Ray notices something extraordinary in the night sky. Hancock has carved the all-heart symbol onto the moon. It's not just a cool visual, that symbol represents exactly the message Ray had been trying to teach Hancock from the start. That being a hero isn't just about strength. It's about compassion, responsibility, and having heart. By placing that symbol on the moon, Hancock is sending a quiet message to the world. He may still live alone, may still stay distant, but now he finally understands what it means to protect others. And sometimes the most powerful heroes are the ones who choose to watch over the world from the shadows. Here's something a lot of viewers don't realize: the story behind Hancock is almost as interesting as the movie itself. Because the film that made it to screen went through years of development and major changes before reaching theaters. The original script actually had a very different tone: darker, more serious, and focused heavily on the psychological side of a troubled superhero. Over time, the filmmakers reshaped the story, adding humor, action, and emotional moments to create a more balanced experience. That decision helped the movie stand out. Of course, one of the biggest reasons the film works is Will Smith's performance. At the time, Smith was already one of Hollywood's biggest stars, known for blending charisma, comedy, and action in a way few actors could match. But Hancock was a very different type of role for him. Instead of playing a confident hero, he had to portray someone flawed, reckless, and emotionally lost. The challenge was making the audience laugh at Hancock's behavior while still feeling sympathy for him, and that balance became one of the film's biggest strengths. The movie also features Charlize Theron and Jason Bateman, whose performances helped ground the story emotionally. Bateman's character, Ray, acts as the film's moral compass, while Theron's Mary introduces the mystery that redirects the entire plot. Behind the scenes, the film leaned heavily on advanced visual effects to bring Hancock's powers to life. The flying scenes, high-impact crashes, and massive destruction sequences required complex CGI paired with practical stunts. One especially tricky challenge was making Hancock's strength feel believable when he throws objects or crashes into buildings. The visual effects team had to carefully simulate real-world physics so the destruction looked powerful but still realistic. Despite mixed reactions from critics, the movie pulled off something impressive. When Hancock hit theaters in 2008, it became a massive box office success, earning more than $600 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest superhero films of its time. Which says something interesting about the film. Even though the character himself struggled to win the world's approval, the movie about him captured audiences everywhere. To really understand what makes Hancock unique, it helps to compare it with other superhero films, because when most people picture superheroes, they imagine characters who are almost perfect heroes in iconic suits, following strict moral codes, admired by the entire world. Think of Superman, noble, disciplined, respected, someone whose appearance makes people feel safe. Hancock is the complete opposite. When he shows up, people panic. Instead of cleanly saving the city, he crashes through buildings, wrecks highways, and leaves chaos in his wake. The film intentionally flips the traditional superhero formula by asking a bold question: what if a superhero had incredible power but absolutely no idea how to be a hero? In that sense, Hancock feels closer to modern anti-hero stories like Deadpool. Both characters break expectations of what a superhero should look like. Both are messy and unpredictable, and both cause about as many problems as they solve, even as there's a deeper human side underneath the chaos. Still, Hancock stands apart from those films because it blends something unusual: comedy, action, and emotional drama all in the same story. Unlike many superhero movies focused mainly on epic battles, Hancock spends a lot of time exploring the character's personal struggles. His loneliness, his lost memories, his search for purpose matter just as much as the action scenes. That's what gives Hancock its odd but fascinating place in the genre. It's not as dark as some anti-hero films, but it's also not as traditional as classic superhero stories. It exists somewhere in the middle, a story about a powerful man who isn't trying to save the world. He's just trying to figure out how to live in it. When Hancock finally hit theaters in 2008, the reaction was immediate and massive. The movie exploded at the box office. Audiences were curious to see something different, a superhero who wasn't perfect, who didn't follow the usual rules, and who behaved more like a reckless anti-hero than a traditional savior. That curiosity paid off. The film went on to earn over $600 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest blockbuster hits of the year. For a lot of viewers, the mix of action, comedy, and emotional drama made it wildly entertaining, and a big part of that success came down to Will Smith's performance. His knack for blending humor, attitude, and vulnerability made Hancock a character audiences could both laugh at and sympathize with. But while audiences loved it, critics had a very different reaction. Many praised the movie's unique concept and Smith's performance, but pointed to something that divided opinion: the story's dramatic shift in the second half. The first half focuses on Hancock's redemption and his journey to becoming a better hero. But later, once the mystery of Mary and Hancock's ancient connection comes out, the film changes direction. For some viewers, that twist made the story more interesting and emotional. For others, It felt sudden and slightly confusing. Because of that, the film became something critics often call divisive, as some loved its originality, while others felt it struggled to balance its different ideas. But here's the interesting part. Over time, Hancock has built a stronger reputation among audiences. Many fans now appreciate the movie for taking risks and telling a superhero story that feels different from the usual formula. For some viewers, that unusual mix of humor, mystery, and emotional depth is exactly what makes Hancock memorable. Because sometimes the most interesting superhero stories aren't about perfect heroes. They're about flawed ones trying to find their way. Review. When Hancock first hit theaters, audiences thought they knew exactly what they were getting: another superhero blockbuster, another larger-than-life hero flying through the sky, saving the day, beating a villain, and walking away to a cheering city. By 2008, that formula was already familiar. Superhero movies had a rhythm people understood. The hero arrives, the villain threatens the world, the hero wins. But Hancock wasn't interested in following that formula, and that's exactly where the film's biggest problem and its most interesting quality begins. Because the moment the movie starts, it's clear this isn't the superhero story audiences were expecting. Instead of a heroic symbol the public admires, we meet John Hancock, a drunken, foul-mouthed, deeply unpopular man who just happens to have god-level powers. He doesn't land heroically, he crashes. He doesn't inspire hope, he inspires lawsuits. Every time he saves someone, the city ends up paying millions in damage. Buildings collapse, cars explode, entire intersections get wrecked. And the people he rescues aren't grateful, they're angry. The police are frustrated, the government is furious, and the public is tired of cleaning up after him. That single idea flips the entire superhero genre on its head. But here's where things get interesting. A lot of the criticism aimed at Hancock wasn't really about what the film did, it was about what audiences expected it to do. Many viewers walked in anticipating a traditional comic book spectacle, something closer to the polished heroics of the big franchises dominating the genre. Instead they got something stranger, a superhero movie where the hero is the problem. A story where the biggest conflict isn't a villain threatening the world but a man struggling with himself. Hancock isn't fighting evil masterminds, he's fighting his own attitude, his own loneliness, and the fact that the world doesn't want him around. For some viewers, that was refreshing. For others, it felt like the movie had broken an unspoken contract. Superhero movies, after all, are usually built around clear expectations. As the hero rises, the villain falls, the audience leaves feeling triumphant. Hancock disrupts that structure almost right away. Instead of clean heroism, it offers messy humanity. The hero drinks, he swears, he wrecks half the city trying to help, and he genuinely doesn't seem to care what anyone thinks of him. That shift in expectations split the audience. Some appreciated the originality, seeing Hancock as a clever twist on the genre, a story exploring what a superhuman might actually look like in the real world. Others felt thrown by the film's refusal to play by the usual rules. But regardless of which side viewers landed on, one thing was clear: Hancock wasn't trying to be the same kind of superhero movie everyone was used to. And that difference is exactly why the film still sparks debate years after its release. Because sometimes the most interesting superhero stories aren't about saving the world. Sometimes they're about saving the hero himself. Imagine a superhero who saves your life and then destroys half your city doing it. Your car is crushed, the street is ruined, buildings are collapsing, and the hero responsible for all of that is drunk. That single idea is the foundation of Hancock, and it's one of the most interesting premises the superhero genre has ever attempted. Instead of another perfect, noble protector flying across the skyline, the film asks a different question. What if the world's most powerful superhero was also its biggest disaster? John Hancock isn't the kind of hero audiences are used to. He doesn't stand proudly on rooftops protecting the innocent. He sleeps on park benches with bottles in paper bags, and he only wakes up when someone drags him into a rescue. When he does help, things get messy, cars explode, roads collapse, entire blocks end up destroyed. The people he saves should be grateful, but instead they're furious, because every heroic act of his costs the city millions. That flips the entire superhero fantasy on its head. Normally superheroes are admired, symbols of hope, people cheer when they show up. But in Hancock, the public hates him. They don't see a savior, they see a problem. And that's what makes the premise so compelling. The film takes the fantasy of superpowers and drops it into a world that reacts realistically. If someone with unlimited strength, flight, and invulnerability existed but had zero discipline, cities wouldn't celebrate him. They'd try to get rid of him. This is where Hancock becomes more than just a comedy gimmick. He's not simply a drunk superhero played for laughs. He's someone completely disconnected from the world around him. He doesn't know where he came from, doesn't remember his past, and clearly doesn't believe anyone actually cares about him. That loneliness sits right beneath all the chaos. Every sarcastic remark, every reckless rescue, every destructive landing feels like the behavior of someone who's stopped trying to belong. And that's why the premise works so well. Because beneath the jokes and explosions, Hancock is really about a man who's forgotten how to be human. He has unlimited power but no purpose, which is a far more interesting starting point than the usual superhero origin story. Instead of asking how someone becomes a hero, the film asks something deeper. What happens when someone with godlike power doesn't want to be one at all? That question is what makes Hancock stand out in a genre full of capes and costumes. Because this time, the hero doesn't need to save the world. He needs to save himself. In most superhero movies, the formula is simple. There's a villain, there's a hero, and eventually they fight. Cities get threatened, the world hangs in the balance, and the whole plot builds toward one massive showdown. Hancock does something very unusual. It pulls the villain out of the center of the story entirely. Because the real battle here isn't happening in the sky. It's happening inside the hero. From the start, the film makes clear that Hancock's biggest enemy isn't some evil mastermind plotting world domination. It's himself. His anger, his loneliness, his bitterness toward a world that clearly doesn't appreciate him, and maybe worst of all, his total lack of purpose. Think about it. Hancock has the kind of power most superheroes dream of. He can fly, he's nearly indestructible, and nothing on earth can really stop him. Yet he lives like a man who's given up. He drinks constantly, avoids people, doesn't care if the public hates him, and barely puts in the effort when he does save someone. That's what makes Hancock so different from traditional superhero films. Instead of building the story around a villain's scheme, it focuses on a broken man trying to figure out who he is. The turning point comes when Hancock meets Ray Embry. Ray isn't a superhero, isn't a soldier, isn't even particularly powerful. He's a public relations expert. But what Ray understands, something Hancock clearly doesn't, is that heroism isn't just about power. It's about responsibility, discipline, and how people perceive you. Ray looks at Hancock and sees potential, not the destructive mess the public complains about, but the hero hiding underneath. So instead of preparing Hancock for a battle, Ray prepares him for something much harder: change. Hancock has to learn how to behave like someone people can believe in. That means facing consequences for the destruction he's caused, controlling his anger, and trying to reconnect with a world he's spent years pushing away. That's where the film shifts from action to character. The real tension in Hancock doesn't come from whether he can beat a villain. We already know he can. The real question is whether he can overcome the things destroying his own life. Can he stop drinking? Can he accept responsibility? Can he become someone the world actually respects? That internal struggle becomes the heart of the story. turning the movie from a typical superhero spectacle into something closer to a character study. A look at what happens when someone with extraordinary power has absolutely no idea how to live with it. Because in the end, the most dangerous enemy Hancock faces isn't standing across a battlefield, it's staring back at him in the mirror. There's a reason Hancock works as well as it does, even when the story struggles. Will Smith playing a superhero is one thing. Playing a superhero who's rude, drunk, hated by the public, and borderline unlikable for half the movie is a much harder job. Yet Smith carries the entire film. From the moment Hancock appears on screen, he feels completely different from the heroic figures audiences are used to. There's no dramatic entrance, no inspiring speech, no shining armor. Instead, we meet a man asleep on a park bench with a bottle in his hand. When someone wakes him and tells him there's a crime happening across the city, he doesn't rush off like a traditional hero. He sighs, reluctantly, almost annoyed that he has to help. That attitude is the heart of Smith's performance. Hancock isn't just flawed, he's deliberately abrasive. He insults people, causes destruction, and seems completely uninterested in being liked. In a lot of movies, that kind of character would get exhausting fast, but Smith does something clever. He lets us see the humanity underneath the arrogance. Beneath the sarcasm and reckless behavior, there's a loneliness that quietly shapes the character. You start to realize his anger isn't just arrogance, it's frustration, because he doesn't understand who he is, where he came from, or why the world feels so disconnected from him. Smith balances those layers well. One moment he's landing a sharp joke or sarcastic remark, the next there's a subtle expression hinting at something deeper, a confusion, regret, maybe even sadness. That emotional contrast makes the character believable, because Hancock isn't just a comedic anti-hero. He's a man who's lost his sense of identity. His powers isolate him, his past is missing, and the world sees him as a problem instead of a protector. Smith's performance captures that conflict beautifully. Physically, Smith also sells the character's superhuman nature. The way Hancock flies, lands, and moves through action scenes feels effortless, with a natural confidence that makes the power believable without being exaggerated. But the real strength of the performance isn't the action, it's the transformation. Over the course of the film, Hancock slowly begins to change. He starts confronting the consequences of his behavior, begins caring about how people see him, and little by little that reckless anti-hero starts to look like a true protector. Smith handles that transition carefully. He doesn't suddenly become noble overnight. The change feels gradual, awkward, and sometimes uncomfortable. Exactly the way real personal growth would feel. That's what makes the performance so effective. Even when the film itself gets uneven, Will Smith remains the anchor holding it together. His charisma keeps the audience invested, his humor keeps the tone lively, and his emotional depth gives the character a sense of realism. In a lot of ways, Hancock lives or dies on Smith's ability to make this unusual hero believable. And for the most part, he succeeds. A superhero may carry the story, but the people around him determine who he becomes, and in Hancock, two characters play that role perfectly, Ray Embry and Mary Embry. Without them, Hancock would still be the same destructive, drunken outcast we meet at the start of the movie, because while he has the power to lift trains and smash through buildings, he has absolutely no idea how to live among normal people. That's where Ray Embry, played by Jason Bateman, comes in. Ray isn't a fighter, isn't powerful, isn't even particularly successful. He's a struggling PR consultant with one unusual quality: he believes in people, even when no one else does. When Hancock saves Ray from an oncoming train, destroying half the city in the process, Ray doesn't see a walking disaster. He sees potential, a hero trapped inside someone who simply doesn't know how to behave like one. That belief changes everything. Ray becomes the unlikely mentor in Hancock's life, teaching him something no one else ever tried to: how to interact with the world, how to take responsibility, how to be someone people can trust. Watching Ray try to guide him often feels like watching a patient teacher working with the world's most stubborn student. Hancock resists everything, rolling his eyes, insulting people, breaking things, but Ray never gives up. Jason Bateman plays the role with the kind of dry humor that makes the character instantly likable, and his calm optimism balances Hancock's recklessness perfectly. Whenever Hancock drifts toward chaos, Ray pulls him back toward something better, giving the film its emotional center. But Ray isn't the only person shaping Hancock's story. There's also Mary. Charlize Theron's character enters the film quietly. At first she seems skeptical of Hancock while Ray wants to help him. Mary clearly doesn't want him anywhere near her family. That tension immediately raises questions. Why is Mary so uncomfortable around him? What does she know that Ray doesn't? Theron plays Mary with a quiet intensity that hints at deeper layers underneath. Calm, composed, and observant, almost like she's carrying a secret she's not ready to reveal. Eventually the film reveals exactly why. Without giving too much away, Mary turns out to be one of the most important pieces of Hancock's past, and her presence shifts the story from a simple redemption arc into something far more personal and mysterious. Theron handles that transition well, her performance moving from quiet resistance to emotional conflict as the truth surfaces. Together, Bateman and Theron give Hancock two very different influences. Ray represents hope and the possibility that Hancock can change and become someone the world respects. Mary represents truth and the key to understanding who Hancock really is and where he came from. Without these two characters, Hancock's journey simply wouldn't exist, because sometimes even the most powerful person in the world needs someone to remind them who they're meant to be. There's something strange about Hancock. Ask 10 people about this movie and you'll probably hear the same sentence: the first half was great, but the second half. And that reaction isn't random, because Hancock almost feels like two completely different movies stitched together. Start with the beginning. The first half is where the movie truly shines. It's fast, funny, and surprisingly fresh for a superhero story. Instead of a heroic introduction, we meet Hancock passed out on a park bench with a bottle in hand. He's not admired or respected. He's the most hated man in Los Angeles, and every rescue he performs just makes things worse. Buildings collapse, cars explode, and millions of dollars in property damage follow every heroic act. The city is furious, the police are frustrated, and the public would honestly rather he just stayed away. That setup is brilliant. How the movie plays like a dark comedy about the worst superhero imaginable. Watching Hancock stumble through rescues with total indifference is genuinely entertaining. Scenes like the chaotic train rescue, the destructive police chase, and Hancock's reluctant attempts to improve his behavior all capture the film's original idea perfectly. It's funny, it's sharp, and it feels like a clever satire of superhero movies themselves. Then something changes. Right around the middle of the film, Hancock starts moving in a completely different direction. The story introduces deeper mythology, hidden connections between characters, and a dramatic twist that reshapes the whole narrative. Suddenly the movie isn't a dark comedy anymore, it becomes something else entirely. The tone shifts from playful satire to serious drama, and the humor that carried the first half starts to fade. Instead of focusing on Hancock's awkward attempts to become a better hero, the film dives into mysterious backstory and emotional conflict. For some viewers, this twist adds real depth. But for many others, it feels like the movie abandons its strongest idea. The early scenes promised a sharp comedy about a flawed superhero trying to repair his reputation. The later scenes become more focused on mythology, romance, and dramatic revelations. That change creates a noticeable imbalance as the pacing slows down, the story gets heavier, and the playful energy of the first half fades away. It's not that the second half is bad, Exactly, it just feels like a different movie than the one we started watching. Imagine going in expecting a clever superhero satire, and halfway through it suddenly turns into a mythological drama about ancient powers and emotional destiny. That tonal shift is exactly why Hancock remains so divisive. Some viewers appreciate the ambition of expanding the story beyond comedy, others wish it had stayed focused on the idea that made the beginning so entertaining: a destructive superhero learning how to become a real hero. In the end, Hancock isn't just remembered for its premise, it's remembered for that moment halfway through when the movie changes direction, and whether that shift works for you depends entirely on what you wanted the film to be. One of the biggest reasons Hancock feels so unusual is that it never fully decides what kind of movie it wants to be. Is it a comedy, a superhero blockbuster, a romantic drama, a mythological story about immortal beings? The truth is, it tries to be all of them at once, and that's where the film's biggest tonal imbalance begins. At the start, Hancock feels like a dark comedy. The humor is built around a superhero who behaves like the last person you'd want saving the day. He's drunk, he's rude, and every time he tries to help, the city ends up paying millions in damage. Watching him stumble through rescues with total indifference is both funny and refreshing. The movie almost feels like it's making fun of superhero films themselves. For a while, that tone works beautifully. The film is playful, sarcastic, and full of awkward situations as Hancock deals with a public that hates him. His attempts to improve his image, guided by Ray, lead to some of the movie's most entertaining moments. But as the story progresses, the tone begins to shift. Slowly at first, then suddenly, the film starts introducing deeper mythology. Characters reveal hidden connections, emotional conflicts take center stage, and what began as a dark comedy gradually transforms into something far more serious. The humor fades, the drama increases, and the movie starts exploring ideas about immortality, ancient relationships, and emotional sacrifice. That's where audiences start to feel the imbalance. The early tone promised a sharp comedic look at a dysfunctional superhero, but the later tone pushes the film toward romance, mythology, and heavy emotional themes. It's almost like watching two different movies sharing the same characters. One moment Hancock is cracking jokes while wrecking half the city, the next he's caught up in a dramatic story about eternal connection and tragic destiny. Some viewers appreciate this ambition, seeing the tonal shifts as an attempt to explore deeper themes beyond simple superhero action. Others feel the movie loses its identity halfway through, and the comedy vanishes too quickly, the drama arrives too suddenly, and the balance between the two never quite settles. But regardless of how you feel about the change, one thing is clear: Hancock isn't a simple superhero movie. It's a film constantly shifting between humor and seriousness, satire and mythology, and whether that mix feels bold or just uneven depends entirely on how willing you are to go along for the ride. There's a moment while watching Hancock when you realize something strange. The movie started with a brilliant idea, but somewhere along the way, it seems to lose its grip on that idea, and that's where the film's writing and structure become the biggest talking point. On paper, Hancock has an incredibly strong concept: a superhero hated by the public, a man with godlike powers who drinks too much, destroys everything around him, and doesn't care what anyone thinks. That premise alone feels fresh, opening the door to sharp satire, emotional storytelling, and a completely different kind of superhero journey. For a while, the script actually delivers on that promise. The early writing is clever and funny. Hancock's dialogue is full of sarcastic remarks and blunt honesty that instantly makes him stand out, and his interactions with Ray bring out the comedic potential of the story, especially as Ray tries to teach this reckless hero how to act like a responsible public figure. These scenes feel natural, witty, and entertaining. But as the film moves forward, the structure starts to change. New plot elements pile up quickly as the story introduces deeper mythology about Hancock's past, his powers, and his connection to other characters. And instead of building these ideas slowly, the script stacks them on top of each other. That's where things start to feel rushed. The film's runtime is only about 90 minutes, which doesn't leave much room to fully explore the complex mythology introduced later. Important revelations show up suddenly, and the narrative races toward its conclusion. As a result, some parts of the story feel underdeveloped. Questions about Hancock's origins get raised but never fully answered, relationships shift quickly, and certain plot developments arrive before the audience has time to process them. It gives the impression the script has more ideas than it knows how to organize. The dialogue reflects that shift too. Early in the film, conversations feel sharp and comedic. Hancock's sarcastic remarks and Ray's optimistic responses create a lively back and forth that keeps the story moving. Later, the dialogue turns heavier and more dramatic as the film digs into emotional and mythological territory, which changes how the story flows. Some viewers appreciate the ambition behind this, as the script clearly tries to push the film beyond simple superhero action into deeper emotional territory. Others feel the writing gets messy and unfocused, introducing new concepts that pull the story in too many directions at once instead of developing the original premise further. That's why the structure of Hancock often feels uneven. Tightly focused at the start on one strong idea, a destructive superhero trying to repair his reputation, but rushing to explore mythology, romance, and destiny all within a very short runtime. The result is a script full of fascinating ideas that never quite come together as smoothly as they could have. And that's what makes Hancock such an interesting film to talk about. The writing shows real flashes of brilliance, but it also shows how hard it is to turn a great concept into a perfectly balanced story. About halfway through Hancock, the movie does something unexpected. Just when you think you know what kind of story you're watching, a twist appears, and from that moment on, Hancock becomes a completely different movie. Up to this point, the film feels like a clever superhero satire, a reckless hero learning to repair his reputation, guided by Ray, the optimistic PR expert who believes even the city's most hated hero can change. It's funny, energetic, and feels like the movie has found its rhythm. Then the twist hits. Without spoiling the details, the film reveals something major about Hancock's past and about a character who's quietly been part of the story from the beginning. Suddenly the narrative expands well beyond a simple redemption arc. What looked like a story about public image and personal growth turns into something much larger. The twist introduces mythology, suggesting that Hancock's powers are part of something ancient and mysterious, tied to a history stretching far beyond what we've seen so far. That revelation changes everything. For some viewers, this moment is exciting. It injects new energy into the story and raises fascinating questions about who Hancock really is, adding a layer of mystery the earlier scenes only hinted at. But the twist also creates new challenges for the film, because once that door opens, the story has to deal with everything behind it. New questions pile up immediately. Where did Hancock come from? How long has he existed? What exactly connects him to the other characters? The film introduces these mysteries quickly but doesn't always have time to explore them fully. With the runtime already heading toward its final act, the narrative rushes to resolve the consequences of this revelation. That's where the twist becomes divisive. Some viewers enjoy the sudden expansion of the story, appreciating the attempt to move past comedy into deeper emotional territory. Others feel the twist disrupts the film's original identity. What began as a sharp comedy about a dysfunctional superhero shifts toward mythology, romance, and dramatic conflict. The humor fades, the tone gets heavier, and the story starts focusing on emotional consequences instead of comedic chaos. Because the twist arrives relatively late, The film doesn't always have enough time to develop the ideas it introduces. Important revelations appear fast, relationships take on new meaning almost instantly, and the final act ends up resolving emotional stakes that were only just revealed. That's why the twist in Hancock remains one of the movie's most debated elements. It's bold, it's surprising, but it also reshapes the entire story in a way some viewers love and others feel changes the movie they were enjoying. Because in the end, that twist doesn't just reveal something about Hancock, it changes what the movie itself is trying to be. By the time Hancock reaches its final act, many viewers are left thinking the same thing. Wait, how does all of this actually work? Because once the film starts revealing more about Hancock's powers and past, it introduces a mythology that raises a lot of questions, questions the movie doesn't always fully answer. At the start, Hancock's abilities seem simple enough. He can fly, he's incredibly strong, and almost nothing can hurt him. In a typical superhero film that would be enough. The hero has powers, a villain challenges those powers, the story moves forward. But Hancock hints there's more to it. Throughout the movie, pieces of his past surface. We learn he doesn't remember where he came from, his memory is fractured, leaving him with little understanding of who he really is or why he has these abilities. That mystery works well at first, adding intrigue and giving the audience a reason to keep watching. If Hancock himself doesn't know the truth about his origins, discovering it becomes part of the story. But once the film finally explains the mythology behind his powers, the narrative gets more complicated. Suddenly the rules governing his abilities aren't as straightforward as they seemed. There are connections between characters hinting at something ancient and mysterious, and his powers seem to follow conditions that are only partially explained. That's where the questions start piling up. How long has Hancock actually existed? Why does he have these abilities in the first place? What are the limits of his powers? The film raises these ideas without always exploring them in depth, instead pushing forward quickly and leaving some of the mythology open to interpretation. For some viewers, that ambiguity adds to the film's mystique. Not every detail needs to be spelled out, and leaving certain things unexplained can make a story feel bigger than what's shown on screen. For others, the lack of clear answers makes the narrative feel incomplete. Once a movie expands its mythology, audiences naturally want to understand the rules of that world. And when those rules stay unclear, the story can start to feel inconsistent. Because Hancock introduces these ideas relatively late, there isn't much time left to develop them fully. The final act focuses on resolving the emotional conflict between characters rather than digging into the deeper mythology behind Hancock's existence. As a result, the film ends with a sense that there's more to this story than what we've seen. Hints of a larger history, fragments about Hancock's past, implications about how his powers work, but many of those details stay just out of reach. And that's why the mythology of Hancock keeps sparking discussion long after the credits roll, because sometimes the most intriguing part of a story isn't what it explains, it's what it leaves unanswered. Superhero movies live and die by their spectacle. If someone can fly, stop trains, smash through buildings, and survive explosions, the movie has to make that power feel real. In Hancock, the action and visual presentation try to deliver exactly that. From the very first rescue scene, the film shows us what kind of power Hancock really has. When he takes off, it isn't graceful, it's explosive. Asphalt cracks beneath his feet, debris flies everywhere, and the impact of his strength is impossible to ignore. Every action scene hammers home the same idea: Hancock isn't just powerful, he's destructive. When he stops a train, it's not a smooth heroic moment, it's chaotic. Metal bends, vehicles crash, and the whole situation feels barely under control. That's part of the film's unique approach to action. Instead of presenting superhero moments as polished and elegant, Hancock shows them as messy and overwhelming. When someone with this much strength moves through a city, things break, a lot. The visual effects help sell that chaos. For its time, the CGI used to portray Hancock's flight, strength, and collisions with the environment was impressive. Watching him launch into the sky or smash through structures gives a clear sense of his immense power. But the film's visual style is just as noticeable as the effects themselves. Director Peter Berg uses a camera style very different from the typical superhero blockbuster, relying more on handheld camera work and rapid movement than steady, perfectly framed shots. The camera zooms, circles characters, and shakes during action sequences, sometimes creating a sense of immediacy, as if the viewer is standing in the middle of the chaos while Hancock tears through the city. Other times the technique feels a bit much. Certain scenes get so visually aggressive that it's hard to focus on the action itself, with rapid zooms and circling close-ups occasionally distracting rather than enhancing what's happening on screen. Still, the film clearly aims to make the action feel grounded. Instead of treating superhero abilities as clean visual spectacle, Hancock tries to show the raw impact of those powers in a real environment. Streets crack when he lands, objects shatter when he moves, the city becomes a battlefield every time he steps in. That approach suits the character perfectly. Hancock isn't a graceful superhero, he's a wrecking ball, and the visual presentation reflects that personality. Loud, chaotic, sometimes messy, just like the man at the center of the story. Even if some of the effects have aged, the film's action sequences still capture something important about the character. When Hancock arrives to save the day, you can be absolutely certain of one thing: something's going to break. Hancock is a superhero movie that moves fast, very fast. One of the most surprising things about the film is its runtime. At just over 90 minutes, it's unusually short for a blockbuster about a superpowered character flying around destroying cities. Most superhero films run well past 2 hours. But Hancock tells its story and gets out quickly, and that choice has a big impact on how the movie feels. At first, the fast pacing works in the film's favor. The opening scenes move quickly from one moment to the next, introducing Hancock's chaotic lifestyle and the public's frustration with him almost immediately. Within minutes, we understand everything about this character. He's powerful, reckless, and the world is tired of dealing with him. The story doesn't waste time getting to the point. Action scenes arrive fast, jokes land quickly, and the narrative keeps moving without long pauses. That momentum makes the first half feel energetic and entertaining. But as the movie goes on, the short runtime starts to cause problems. Once the story introduces deeper mythology and emotional revelations, it suddenly has a lot more to explain. New connections between characters, secrets about Hancock's past, shifts in the direction of the narrative, and there simply isn't enough time to explore all of it properly. Because the film is racing toward its conclusion, some developments feel rushed. Important moments arrive with little build-up, and major revelations get followed almost immediately by the next plot point instead of being allowed to breathe. Some viewers have even noticed that different versions of the film exist. The unrated cut released later runs slightly longer than the theatrical version, suggesting parts of the story may have been trimmed during editing to keep the runtime short. That editing choice might explain why the film occasionally feels like it's missing pieces. Scenes transition quickly, character relationships shift fast, and certain plot elements appear and disappear before the audience has time to fully process them. The pacing almost feels like it's racing against its own clock. To be fair, this speed also has its upsides. The movie rarely drags, delivering action, humor, and character moments without stretching the story out unnecessarily. But the trade-off is clear: the short runtime helps maintain energy while also keeping some of the film's most interesting ideas from being fully developed. Had Hancock taken more time to explore its mythology, character relationships, and emotional conflicts, the story might have felt more complete. Instead, it feels like it's constantly hurrying toward the ending, one of the most noticeable contradictions in the movie, fast enough to stay entertaining, but sometimes too fast to feel fully satisfying. Every great superhero story usually has one thing: a villain. Someone powerful, dangerous, and compelling enough to challenge the hero. Think of the greatest superhero films. The Joker challenges Batman, Thanos challenges the Avengers, and villains often become just as memorable as the heroes themselves. But Hancock does something very unusual. It almost forgets about the villain entirely, and that creates one of the film's most noticeable weaknesses. At the start of the movie, this doesn't feel like a problem. The story focuses on Hancock himself, his reckless behavior, his damaged reputation, his struggle to fit into a world that clearly doesn't appreciate him. In fact, the film almost treats the public as the antagonist. The city is angry with him, the police are frustrated with him, and the government is tired of paying for the destruction he causes. The conflict feels personal and internal rather than physical. But as the story goes on, the movie eventually introduces a more traditional villain. Criminal elements show up, trying to challenge Hancock and create danger for the final act. The problem is they never feel like a real threat. Compared to Hancock's incredible strength and invulnerability, the antagonists seem almost insignificant. They arrive late in the story and don't get enough development to make their motivations or presence feel truly impactful. So the final conflict lacks the intensity you'd expect from a superhero climax. The villains don't feel powerful enough to challenge the hero, and they don't get enough screen time to become memorable. That absence of a strong antagonist shifts the film's focus back to its central characters. Ray Embry becomes one of the most important supporting figures in the story. His optimism and belief in Hancock give the hero's transformation its emotional foundation, representing the possibility of redemption. Then there's Mary Embry, whose character introduces mystery and emotional tension, eventually becoming a key part of the film's deeper mythology. Together, these supporting characters shape Hancock's journey far more than any villain does. That also highlights the film's unusual structure. Instead of building toward a dramatic showdown between hero and villain, Hancock builds toward an emotional resolution between its main characters. The story isn't about defeating a powerful enemy, it's about understanding who Hancock really is and what kind of hero he can become. That choice sets the movie apart from most superhero films, but it also leaves some viewers feeling like something's missing. Because when the credits roll, one question still lingers: was the real conflict ever meant to be between hero and villain? Or was it always about the hero learning to face himself? Underneath all the explosions, flying, and smashed buildings, Hancock is actually a surprisingly emotional story, because at its core the film isn't really about a superhero saving the world. It's about a man trying to save himself. When we first meet Hancock, he's not just reckless, he's completely alone. No family, no friends, no clear memory of where he came from. His past is a mystery even to him, and that loneliness shapes everything about his personality. He drinks, he pushes people away, and he pretends not to care what anyone thinks about him. But that indifference is really just a defense mechanism. The truth is, Hancock doesn't know how to connect with people anymore. That's where the emotional heart of the story begins. Ray Embry becomes the first person who truly believes Hancock can change. He doesn't see a destructive nuisance, he sees a hero who simply needs guidance. Ray's young son, Aaron, takes that belief even further. To Aaron, Hancock isn't a disaster, he's a hero, and that innocent admiration becomes one of the movie's most powerful emotional forces. For the first time, Hancock sees someone looking at him with genuine respect instead of frustration or fear, and slowly, that begins to change him. He starts trying to become better, not because he's forced to, but because someone finally believes he can. The film's emotional weight deepens once it starts exploring Hancock's past. His connection to Mary reveals that his loneliness isn't just a result of his behavior, it's part of his existence. The story suggests that immortality comes with a cost. Living forever means watching relationships fade, losing connections, and eventually ending up alone. That realization adds a tragic dimension to Hancock's character. His powers make him extraordinary, but they also isolate him from the world he's supposed to protect. The emotional climax of the film centers on sacrifice. True heroism in Hancock isn't about strength or invulnerability. It's about making painful choices for the sake of others. The story suggests that love, connection, and vulnerability matter far more than the ability to fly or lift trains, and that message gives the film its emotional payoff. By the end, Hancock finally understands something he never grasped before: being a hero isn't just about saving people, it's about caring enough to change for them. And that emotional journey, more than any action sequence, is what ultimately defines Hancock as a story. On the surface, Hancock looks like a superhero movie, a man who can fly, lift trains, shrug off bullets. But beneath the action and comedy, the film quietly explores something deeper, because Hancock isn't really about superpowers. It's about power itself. What happens when someone has unlimited strength but no direction? From the beginning, Hancock represents a strange contradiction. He has the ability to save anyone, stop any crime, reshape the world around him, yet he lives like someone completely lost. He drinks heavily, pushes people away, and treats his incredible abilities almost like a burden. That contrast points to one of the film's underlying ideas: power without purpose can be destructive. Hancock has the strength to change the world, but without discipline or responsibility, that strength just causes chaos. In a way, he becomes a symbol of flawed authority, someone capable of doing great things but unable to control the consequences of their actions. Some viewers even read the film through a broader lens, seeing Hancock as a metaphor for powerful figures or institutions that try to help others but end up causing damage along the way. The city he protects doesn't celebrate him, it resents him, because every time he intervenes, the cost is enormous. Another theme the film explores is immortality and isolation. As the story unfolds, Hancock's existence starts to feel less like a gift and more like a curse. Living for centuries means watching the world change while he stays the same. Relationships fade, connections disappear, and eventually immortality becomes loneliness. The film suggests that even someone with godlike abilities can't escape the need for human connection, which is exactly why Hancock's emotional journey matters so much. His story isn't about learning to fight villains, it's about learning how to care about people again. The film also touches on redemption. Hancock starts the story as someone the world has already given up on, but through Ray and his family's influence, he slowly realizes that being powerful isn't enough. True heroism requires responsibility, sacrifice, and, most importantly, empathy. By the end, Hancock isn't just trying to save people from danger, he's trying to become someone worthy of the power he's been given. And that transformation gets at the film's deeper message: superheroes may have incredible abilities, but what truly defines them is how they choose to use that power. Sometimes a movie isn't judged only by what it is, but by what people expected it to be, and Hancock is a perfect example. Before it even reached theaters, the trailers had already painted a very specific picture: a hilarious superhero comedy about a drunken, reckless hero who causes chaos everywhere he goes. The marketing leaned hard into that idea: a superhero with a terrible attitude, a PR expert trying to fix his image, a city completely fed up with the destruction he leaves behind. It looked like a sharp satire of the superhero genre. And honestly, the first part of the film delivers exactly that. For the first 40 minutes or so, Hancock feels like the movie the trailers promised. The humor is strong, the premise is fresh, and the concept of a destructive superhero trying to repair his reputation works really well. But then the story changes direction. Instead of continuing to build on the comedic premise, the film introduces deeper mythology, emotional drama, and a twist that reshapes the entire narrative. Suddenly the movie isn't just about fixing Hancock's public image anymore. It becomes a story about ancient powers, hidden connections between characters, and a much heavier emotional conflict. For some viewers, that shift was exciting. For others, it felt like the film abandoned the very idea that made it interesting in the first place. That's where the sense of missed opportunity creeps in. The premise of a reckless superhero learning to become a responsible one had enormous potential. The early scenes prove just how entertaining that concept could be, and watching Hancock struggle to behave like a proper hero produces some of the film's funniest, most memorable moments. But once the story shifts into its mythological twist, that original idea starts fading into the background. Instead of pushing the satire further, the story turns more serious and complicated. And that's why so many viewers walk away thinking the same thing. The movie had an incredible concept, but it didn't fully use it. Some of the most interesting ideas introduced early on are the PR angle. The realistic consequences of superhero destruction only get explored briefly before the story moves on to something else. It's not that the movie turns bad, it's that it feels like it could have been even better, because hidden inside Hancock is a brilliant idea for a superhero story that challenges the entire genre, a hero who has to learn not just how to save people, but how to deserve their trust. That idea alone had the potential to carry the entire film, which is why, even years later, Hancock still sparks the same conversation, not just about what the movie did, but about everything it almost did. So after everything Hancock tries to do, the comedy, the action, the twist, the mythology, the emotional story, one big question remains. Is Hancock actually a good movie? The honest answer is yes, but also number. Because Hancock is one of those films that feels both impressive and frustrating at the same time. On one hand, the movie deserves real credit for its originality. In a genre full of polished, perfect heroes, Hancock dares to show the opposite: a superhero who drinks too much, wrecks half the city while trying to help, and barely cares what people think about him. That idea alone makes the film stand out, and the early part of the movie proves just how strong that concept is. The humor works, the character feels fresh, and the story explores a side of superhero life most films never touch. What happens when the public stops cheering? What happens when the hero himself doesn't want the job? Those questions give Hancock a unique identity in the superhero genre. Then there are the performances. Will Smith carries the film with charisma and emotional depth. Jason Bateman brings warmth and humor, and Charlize Theron adds mystery and emotional tension to the story. Together, the cast keeps the movie engaging, even when the narrative starts to struggle.